minute. So yeah, welcome you all to the Warren Youth Meeting. Again, I'm Nadia, and yeah, just happy folks are able to join us and today. And we are, as much as we're a small and mighty group, I think this will be good too, because we're gonna be looking at a few things today, like one being a local symposium we just heard about. That's that one of our folks, our comrades out in Boston alerted us to about about the program we're fighting, CVE, how that's going to be, they're doing a symposium here in LA. So we haven't really looked at it. So we wanted to take the opportunity today to actually do that. Just kind of peruse through and look through the website, see who's going to be there, and just sort of get all of our first fresh thoughts on it. And then also, we're going to be talking about, Matios and Akil will be talking about Errol Southers, who he has his connection to CVE, and of course now LA, the police commission. And so we'll be looking at that as well. And so just to kind of start, and I know like the folks generally here know the background about the Warren Youth Fight, but I think it'll just, want to go over that background for anyone. I know Ryan, I believe this might be your first time joining the Warren Youth, and if it isn't, I'm sorry, my apologies. And just folks I think who are going to be tuning in and watching this later to have that background. So for the folks who know it, might feel a bit repetitive, but it's, that's sort of the reason we want to do it. And so just to kind of go over the programs real quick, when we talk about the Warren Youth, we are looking at, obviously the way young people are criminalized, have historically been criminalized: Black and brown youth, queer youth, Indigenous youth, immigrant youth, trans youth. And knowing that the gang narrative has been used for several decades now and continues to be used to target Black and brown youth, now very explicitly coming together with this narrative of violent extremism and terrorism. And within that, there's the national programs that we fight against, one being CVE, which stands for Countering Violent Extremism. This program is through the Department of Homeland Security and essentially criminalizes any questioning of the US government, any criticism, also specifically naming going to mosques, right, growing a beard. So also, so very anti-Black, anti-Muslim program. Within this program of CVE is other programs such as one called PVE, and I'll put this in the chat too. PVE stands for Preventing Violent Extremism in Schools. And that's the FBI's version, basically, of CVE, and basically listing guidelines. Thank you for doing that. I don't know if that's Matios or Hamid. I know sometimes Hamid is both of y'all. Okay. And so within that, the behaviors basically the FBI lists as potentially suspicious, right, are being too much into your culture, expressing anger, frustration, being in poverty, being a migrant, right, questioning authority. So a lot of just very core aspects to being a human being, and especially being a young person. And so the FBI has basically said that these are indicators that somebody's on this pathway to radicalization, a pathway to becoming a terrorist or violent extremist. So, so really looking at the criminalization of behavior and thought, right? And of course, where it goes from there, right? And so LA's local version, right? And so the three piloting cities of these programs have been LA, Boston, and Minneapolis. And so now more recently, LA has adopted, specifically LAPD, a program called PATHE, which is providing alternatives to hinder extremism. And what that has done is, despite, huge community pressure to not pass it, it did receive a grant under the umbrella of another acronym, TVTP, which is Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention. So underneath that is this PATHE program. And essentially the money has been spent to hire informants, right, snitches, as teachers, faith leaders, people who work with youth, counselors, social workers, to essentially report what they're calling these behaviors. And what's really messed up is, I mean, obviously it's already messed up, but what's also messed up is within PATH, it brings together, right, the gang unit, the mental health unit, in that way, right, to essentially claim to be preventing terrorism. But really, of course, another narrative to add on to criminalizing Black and Brown youth. And so within these programs, this is what we're fighting against, right? When we talk about the war on youth, but we know a lot of folks are engaged in fighting the various wars against youth. And so I'll just pause there for now. That was kind of a quick overview. Want to see if folks have any questions before we continue on. All right, cool. And thanks for putting the alphabet soup in the chat there. So I know I want to pass it on to Matios and to see if it makes the most sense to do maybe the recap of some of the meetings, or if you and Akil would like to talk about Errol Southers first. Yeah, whichever y'all think.
I think let's do a recap of the meetings. Most of it's about war on youth stuff. Some of it isn't, but I think it's all pertinent. And then Hamid, if you want to jump in, because at some point, just because you were at both these meetings too, although you were at the first one very briefly, folks can check out our Instagram to see why Hamid got booted. But yeah, so there were two meetings today we attended. The first was an in-person Board of Police Commissioners meeting, actually the first in-person Board of Police Commissioners meeting in 3 years since COVID popped off. And so it's important to note kind of, Hamid can talk a bit about what meetings were like prior to COVID, but since COVID, there have been a lot of restrictions put in place in meetings generally across LA, but especially at the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment, this is all over Zoom for a long time, but public comment was limited to 45 minutes. There was only one public comment session at the very beginning of the meeting, immediately after the chief's report. So you couldn't even comment on the agenda items that were discussed. And so I think some people, I at least had the sense that these were obviously a political repression tactic that was rationalized through COVID, right? Through this Zoom interface, through the need to facilitate a deluge of callers over Zoom. So, come to find out, when this meeting did happen in person, those limitations were still there. And in fact, people now had to share that 45 time limit restriction, a creation that happened, a limitation that was put in place during COVID. That time had to be shared with both people calling in through Zoom and people participating in person. And so the Board of Police Commissioners meeting takes place in LAPD headquarters. And the Board of Police Commissioners, for folks that don't know, is a civilian body that's chosen by the mayor's office, and they're meant to be the people's voice in police affairs, right? They're supposed to be representative of us. And that room, this meeting specifically, kind of highlighted what a sham that is. First two rows were made up of police, right? Again, these limitations were put into place, and the commission president, Briggs, who's this entertainment lawyer, his brother's a cop, very pro-cop, kicked off the meeting, kind of honoring those 3 officers who were shot in Lincoln Heights, but more than that, just really dismissing and delegitimizing comments by people who were expressing dissent toward the LAPD. I wouldn't even, he was citing emails, public comment emails that the commission had gotten. What's up, Sydney? We're just providing a quick update on the Board of Police Commissioners meeting right now. Yeah, he was dismissing public comment that people had gotten over email and then calling protesters liars. And Hamid, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Matthias, and hey, greetings, everyone. So yeah, this was well, first that this was the first time in 3 years that the meeting was held in person. So it's because they went to Zoom and went online as COVID started. And the way it used to be was that you would have that meeting, and throughout that meeting, whatever agenda item was there, people will have an opportunity to make a comment, including there was a separate time allocated an agenda item for just general comments as well. And what it did was that, that if they had, let's say, if LAPD has a policy that they want to move, so they will have the cops up there who would describe the policy, talk about, just that what purpose it serves, what kind of staffing, blah, blah, blah. So this way people would have at least more informed that would have more information about what was being presented, and then they could make a public comment and just for whatever they would want to say. But when COVID hit, what they did was they completely changed the format, and they would take just everybody's comments on top of the meeting. They would have the chief's report, and then they would allocate 45 minutes, as Matthias was saying, and then they would allow people to, so now you're going almost like unknown into, general comment is a general comment, but on a particular agenda item like monies, policies, operations, tactics, this, that, and the other, you would just completely be going just without much knowledge as to what exactly is even LAPD going to present, and you would be limited to make that comment for a maximum of 3 minutes. So that's exactly, first of all, was the big issue today. And then this morning, as Matthias was saying, that Briggs, who's the president of the commission, he started off in a very condescending way, and by saying that we receive hundreds of emails each week, and yes, we received 120 or so emails, and they all say the same thing, that LAPD murders, and it's about murders, and blah, 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 and just completely absolutely just complete belittling the community, and just using this whole thing about that it's a conspiracy. It's just one group who's just sort of like just sending all these emails, and that's the end of it. And then he went off into talking about the most recent murders that happened, and the person who was murdered, but the emphasis was on what exactly happened, how it happened. So I just raised my voice and I said, "Hey, I mean, is this like the official? Are you sharing with us the conclusion of the official investigation of what happened when this person was shot and killed by the LAPD?" So he said, "Stop disrupting," and I'm like, "No, I'm just asking you a question." And so it got escalated. And then this fool, Steve Soboroff, chimed in, who I told loudly to shut up. I kind of pointed my finger at him and said, "You shut up. I'm talking to somebody else." And next thing you know, I have cops surrounding me and, just escorting me outside. So yeah, that's really, and it was, just folks who have been in that space for many years. I was just talking to them on the side that I guess we haven't lost our touch. So that's where it is. And, just it's a space that should be disrupted and needs to be disrupted. And, we can't allow this damn business as usual anymore. So thank you, Matthias.
Thank you, Hamid. And an important, I think, point about Hamid asking that question is that, these commissioners feign impartiality in a lot of ways, right? So they're the ones that decide if a shooting is out of policy or in policy. And so for Briggs to make a characterization, the shit he was saying was that these cops were heroes, and it was very dehumanizing language around, the person who was killed, or parolee. And we're used to that from the LAPD when they want to put their narrative forward. But this is a body that concludes whether or not an officer killing someone is within policy or outside of policy, which is why it was important that Hamid asked that question. It was also tone setting for Briggs, right? Like I think just letting the audience know that we will be doing political repression today. We're all about it, is what the commission was saying. Yeah, And so that was how the meeting kicked off. And it really was just more of that. They used the chief's report, typically in these meetings at the very top, the Chief Michael Moore presents a report about events, and lo and behold, they leveraged this tragedy, this killing of someone, to talk about the robot dogs, to to kind of bring it back into conversation because there was a vote that failed on it. So one thing we kind of talked about in the room was this wasn't on the agenda, right? Like talking about its capabilities, whether or not how it was going to be used, but that's exactly how Briggs teed it up, and it was under the guise of how it could have been utilized in this specific instance, and that's something we expected, and that's something we hit them on. Do folks have any questions so far about what we've covered so far? Any thoughts? Or if anybody was there or had plugged in, anything you want to share? All right, and I want to welcome our friends that just chimed in. We're just talking about the two meetings that took place today. The Board of Police Commissioners, first in-person one in 3 years, and then we had a public safety meeting too. Anyway, so yeah, just pushing through. They didn't let everybody who was present speak, make public comment because of that 45-minute time limit, and they actually took the meeting to recess after that because folks were upset, understandably, because people obviously drove to downtown, made time at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday or 9:30 a.m. on a Tuesday to make their voices heard, and people were robbed of that opportunity because the police commission didn't like what people have to say. And it's important to note that the police commission has always served this function. They're there not to genuinely hear input from people. In my time kind of paying attention to the Board of Police Commissioners, I've never seen them turn anything down for the LAPD. They're a rubber stamping body, and that's whom they want on that commission. And I say that because recently one of the commissioners, Eileen Decker, left the commission, and we have another one out too, and that's to make room for two nominees from the mayor's office. The Board of Police Commissioners is made up of people appointed by the mayor, and so the mayor nominated was it Rasha Shields? Rasha Shields, yes, who is an attorney at Jones Day, who sat on kind of the advisory body after the George Floyd uprisings, to talk about potential reforms. The other is someone who's more known to the coalition, and Akil is going to provide some background on him later on, but his name is Dr. Errol Southers, also sat on this board, but has a bigger history with as someone who bolsters and is a big proponent for something we fight, CVE, which Nadia had talked about at the top of the meeting. And so that was one of the items at the Public Safety Committee, and that was a call we were on just before this. And both were approved, Errol Southers unanimously, and Shields with one no vote from Hugo. And if folks know the makeup of that committee, it's 5 people. 4 of them are literally bought and paid for by the Los Angeles Police Protective League, and one kind of recurring dissenting voice in Hugo Soto Martinez. But the questioning for Errol Southers never came around extremism. There was no question of his involvement in criminalizing people through extremism. It was very much other lines of questioning. But yeah, Hamid, do you want to chime in and talk a little bit about what you heard about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big issue here is that Rasha Shields is a former federal prosecutor, and I know Akil is going to talk about Errol Southers. He's a former FBI agent, and he's been an FBI agent. He was at Santa Monica Police Department. He was associated with Long Beach PD for 6-7 years. So he's just a cop. I mean, now obviously he's gone into the academy and runs a center on counterterrorism at USC. So I think that's where even in conversations with some of the folks, it was more or less like, regardless of what, I mean, we just don't put any faith in the civilian oversight, and it's a rubber stamp body. But even on the face of it, the experience that they bring and the orientation that they bring is of a cop. I mean, that's exactly how they look at through that prosecutorial criminalization, just punishment type lens. So how can they really be truly a civilian or a community representative? So I think that was really the big issue. Rasha Shields also, and it may not sound good to some folks, but is a classic model minority. Is Middle Eastern descent. Has high level education and all of that. Works for this big powerful law firm, a federal prosecutor, but also was involved in the consent decree on LAPD from 2000 and 2013. Which was a complete failure, which they really toot their horn that LAPD became like a model agency because of the consent decree. So I think and then what's his name, Errol Southers, was just running circles around them because of his grand talk about academic credentials. Dr. Errol Southers, FBI agent, runs a center on counterterrorism. And he would constantly inject by saying, yeah, those are my students. Those police department, those are my students. So somebody asked them a question that about women in police. And he says, yeah, I have some former students who are now in there as well. And we have talked to them. So it was just a fake performative bullshit that we saw. And, the fight continues. It's going to go to the full council and we're going to hit him up there. But, that's one of the reasons for forever. We always say that we never place any, and there's no reason to, place any trust or any expectation in these civilian oversight bodies, which are just a rubber stamp body, basically.
Yeah. And, Errol Southers kind of, when he was talking about himself, what I found interesting was, a lot of the CVE fight, or, what's TVTP now, like the Providing Alternatives to Hinder Extremism program here in Los Angeles, it is centered around schools, right? It's a youth-focused surveillance program. And he off jump said, my interest has always been schools and museums, which, and especially when we think about the role the Museum of Tolerance plays here in Los Angeles, and espousing Zionism and also targeting anti-Zionism in a lot of ways. That to me was a red flag, and also this whole notion of like an interest in domestic terrorism and homegrown terrorism. He was very upfront about that, but of course, these committee members lack the analysis to see the inherent harm in that alone. Which is, why we need to raise our voices. The other thing he was doing that was really weird was kind of conceding that there's a problem, a culture of violence within policing, but he chalked it off to leadership, which is ridiculous when you consider how many chiefs every police department has been through, and yet the culture remains. And he actually went ahead and praised Bill Bratton as a model leader for the LAPD, again, riding on the coattails of that consent decree, after the Rampart scandal, when, if anyone's been plugged into the work the coalition has been doing for years, I want to honor everybody who's been doing that fight. We know that Bill Bratton brought along this, and really was antithetical to the notion and to the belief that crime stems from poverty, right? Crime to Bratton was something that was inherent in people of color, right? In Black and brown communities. And so that racism was obfuscated and sophisticated as data-driven policing under Bratton. And it really did facilitate just a ton of violence, a ton of death in Black and brown communities. And so to hear someone praising Bill Bratton, to hear someone praising the consent decree, that should be concerning. And then, Hamid, if it's not too much trouble, would you be able to provide some folks? I think a lot of folks know that the consent decree was something that kicked in after Rampart, but just provide a little more background, even Bratton's role in that.
Yeah, just real quickly. So consent decree it's a decree. It's a forced agreement between a governmental body that then provides and requires changes to happen, and then the municipalities consents to that. So right after Rampart scandal in 1998, 1999. And this continuing, violence, and we saw Rodney King beaten up before that, 6, 7 years before that. So the Department of Justice threatened to sue the city of Los Angeles, the LAPD, and the Board of Police Commissioners. And this happened in 1999. And the lawsuit was that this is unconstitutional policing, racial profiling, torture, death. I mean, violence against people. So, if people have a chance to even read some of that language, it's really interesting. It was pretty harsh language. This is like right about the end of Clinton's presidency. So, which would mean that if the city comes under a lawsuit, that can also affect its funding, matching grants from federal government and other places too. So what they did was they made an arrangement between the Department of Justice and the city of Los Angeles that the city of Los Angeles agreed that it would impose a decree upon them. So they consented to that, to which they would have to bring an outside federal monitor, which was a retired judge, Judge Fiss, a federal judge, to oversee that and bring an outside agency to establish reforms and to force reforms in the Los Angeles Police Department. And then they set up like these 87 paragraphs. They're called paragraphs, and each one of them required like what would the reporting look like, what would the auditing look like, what would be transparency, this, that, and the other. So that was a consent decree. So then the city had to pay and hire a firm called Kroll and Associates, in which Bill Bratton, who was a former chief of New York Police Department, was now and was fired by Giuliani, who was a mayor of New York. I'm just sharing some history here. Came in as a consultant with this firm. So that's how Bill Bratton showed up. That's where the consent decree was. And Bernard Parks was the chief of the police. He was a black man who was a chief, later on a city council member. So his second term was not renewed by the mayor. So then Bill Bratton was interviewed and he got the job. And then the consent decree basically took almost 13 years to finally level up. But here's what the irony is, that they were talking about consent decree, that one of the main elements of the consent decree that they brought to the judge as a monitor was that, look, we will install dash cameras in police cars. And dash cameras would be then monitoring police misconduct, and they would be like body cameras. Well, this was in 2009. And then, so they had a huge pomp and show about getting the dash cameras out. Well, in 2012, we found out that, actually in 2013, we found out, then the previous year, 2011, 2012, out of the 300 or so patrol cars in which dash cameras were installed, 98 dash cameras, the officers broke the antennas intentionally. And out of those 98 or so, 80 plus were in the South Bureau, which is South Central Los Angeles, and heavily black and brown areas. So now here we are, that they're blatantly saying F you to the consent decree. It also had de-escalation things. It also had use of force things. It also has management things and teams 1 and teams 2. There's a whole lot to that. But that's just the history of the consent decree. And then LAPD then became like this model agency that has reformed itself, even to the extent that in 2015 or whenever Obama, even just in his State of the Union address, invited Charlie Beck to that thing, and then declared LAPD as a model police institution in the United States. So it's just a very quick and dirty version of that. But if people have questions, we'll be happy to talk more about some other time on the site. So I hope that helps.
No, that was incredibly helpful, Hamid. Thank you for that. And I'm going to stray away, but I think it's important to talk about, if it's okay with Akhil and everybody, just a couple of the other agenda items on the Public Safety Committee today. Thanks. Yeah, and one is was overtime for LAPD officers to respond to homelessness, to homeless sweeps, right? Unhoused people sweeps. Um, and obviously nobody wants that. The other was $1.5 million in federal funding for body worn video and other devices to be centralized. And I think understanding um, this donation and to Axon to kind of facilitate all this really informs like why there's so much urgency around these robot dogs specifically for the LAPD and for these city council members, um, and kind of LAPD's relationship with corporations over decades, right? So this item on the agenda was 1.5 million for data management, right? Because the LAPD apparently has 6 petabytes of data from all the video they collected from Axon's body worn video, right? And Axon, formerly Taser International, has had a relationship with the LAPD for decades. They made their tasers first, and then they were the initial. They were the body worn video manufacturer when LAPD first received a donation of body worn video to test out in Skid Row. Since then, that relationship has grown tremendously. It's not just the body worn video anymore. It's also the cloud storage, evidence.com. It's also digital in-car video. And there's an effort now with this money to centralize all that information so that 6 petabytes of just pure data can live somewhere that it's like an in-house medium for the LAPD. And that's dangerous for a number of reasons, right? One, this is just more and more resources to Axon. It's a means by which they can extract resources from us. The other is something our comrade Peter Pollock talks about when he talks about the records management system, right? Which just has this vast access to just vast swaths of data. And Peter says, you know, when you have enough data, you can tell any story. And so this access to this vast amount of data, you know, the 6 petabytes of data allows the LAPD to criminalize whomever, right? Craft whatever narrative. And so that's something I wanted to flag. And it's also why I think the LAPD felt compelled to talk about the robot dog at the police commission today, and felt like they needed to roll out a deputy chief and the vice president from Boston Dynamics to answer questions for city council. It's because they understand that this is a $278,000 donation today, but it's millions of dollars down the line for Boston Dynamics. And that's facilitated through these rubber stamp bodies like the police commission, right? If we hadn't worked to mobilize resistance at city council, this would have gone by. The Board of Police Commissioners approved this unanimously. Public safety, which was largely bought out by the LAPPL, they passed it too. So city council is where we kill it. But anyway, that's why these appointments like Errol Southers and Shields are so important to the LAPD, that they get through, that they are someone who has proximity to policing and has a cultural allegiance to policing, right? To upholding policing as the norm, because that's what facilitates this expansion. I'll stop for any questions.
Hey, Matios. This is Ryan. I was just wondering, with the push for this data to be like centralized and stuff like that, have we seen it? I don't recall if this has been covered, but do we know if this data can also be used or shared like with other police departments or sold to different tech companies? Like, what do we know if there's any rights, but like, protecting the data that they have, like protecting the citizens' data that they collect and whatnot?
Yeah, that's one of the questions they asked today. And the answer, at least as I understood it, Hamid, chime in if you need to feel like it was different, was that they currently share it. They currently actively have shared it with the district attorney's office and the county sheriff's department. But I think he just plainly said we can share it with anybody if they request it. And I don't know if that's limited to agencies or even private institutions. Hamid, if you want to clear that up.
No, I think you're right. Yeah. That's basically it.
Yeah, so that's something we should definitely look into because it sounds like they have a lot of leeway. Like, what is a request? You know?
Yeah. Because I mean, I could see that being another sort of like Pred poll thing or like Sarah map type situation where they, use that data to help inform other police departments and stuff like that, and have that be like a model for others to use, which would be really shitty and just sort of add to the expansion. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it's a good point. Any other questions? Okay. Oh. Okay, cool. They leave it up to LBPD. Jamlet, feel free if you want to chime in. And in fact, Jamlet, I don't know if you want to talk about. I remember when we were there for the ALPR vote, they talked about an upcoming body that was coming together that would maybe review the ALPR. I don't know if you want to talk about that and maybe what role they have in all this.
Yeah, so with the Long Beach Police Department, um, there was $1.2 million that went additional to automated license plate readers. And something that was really key, and this is why it's so important for us to be there, right, for these meetings, is that police had shared that they had a policy, and we actually looked into that policy, and it was unfinished and contradictory. And at the end of the day, it was up to like police internal procedures that were unclear and like just very like not transparent at all, and they didn't even try to have anything that even sounded transparent or like convincing. And so the biggest takeaway for us is just like these policies that are set to protect the rights of folks, like they really are not. At the end of the day, it's up to the police departments to say, wow, this seems like it's reasonable, and so we are going to share the data. And they do share data, and they have done it in the past with ICE. And so there's already been a history of data being shared, and Long Beach is a sanctuary city, right? And so even when we talk about sanctuary, it doesn't really have the protections that we wish it did. In fact, there's a lot of gaps that are missing. So I guess to the point of like, if there's anything that protects us from data not being shared, there really isn't. It always goes down to the police department to have that kind of discretion.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jamalet. And it's incredible how these people wield policy, right? Like it's something we heard 10 times today. They're like, there's policy around it, but we're not like New York City. We have policy. And by the chief's own admission, the culture supersedes policy. And we know that that culture of violence is always going to win. I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments?
That was a comment that LAPD chief made, that culture eats policy for lunch.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting that, that's why we always say F the policy, like, who cares? Like, fuck them, they can have policy on all of it, like, and so it was interesting that when he said that, like, of course you're right. They don't give a shit about the policy.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it for today's meetings. If folks have any questions or want to plug in any further, you can email us at that email address in the chat. And then I think we're going to hand it off to, so Errol Southers passed through by public safety. There's still going to be a meeting on his appointment and Shields' appointment in front of City Council in large. Oh, yeah. That our meeting isn't done, but so sorry. Thank you for that clarification. I just meant like that was the recap in the meetings from today. Thank you, Akil. But I was gonna send it over to Akil to talk about a little background on Errol Southers and yeah, how he kind of intersects with our work.
Hi everyone, I'm Akil. He, him pronouns, stop LAPs fine. One thing that I wanted to preface our little talk about Errol Southers with is that we've noticed these two different trends that sort of intersect with the CVE path fight that we're currently working on. And one is this idea of data-driven, increasing uses of data to basically whitewash the organic process. I mean, the previous process of just pure racial profiling. And then the other one is this idea of laundering these programs that are going to target the people who've always been targeted, especially the Black community, through the idea that they're actually meant to protect people against white supremacists. And Errol Southers actually represents both of these trends in a very important way. Firstly, he really has built his career as an extremism researcher. His post, cop career, his sort of academic, career. One of his big research projects was studying radicalization, supposed radicalization among Somali immigrants in Minnesota. For all the things I'm saying to you all about him today, I don't think he's ashamed or embarrassed about any of them. So it's not like they're secret. They're often on his bio. They're everywhere the first moment you Google him. He is an ardent Zionist, and one of the ways you know that is that he actually teaches at and is a fellow at the Institute for Counterterrorism in so-called Israel, in 48 Palestine, in an Israeli town named after the creator of Zionism, Herzliya. And he goes back and forth, or has gone back and forth, developing these narratives, these frameworks, these theories of radicalization between Palestine and occupied Tongvaland. And basically, one of the things that we're starting to see increasingly, this idea that these extremism programs are meant to protect from the extremes of both sides, meant to protect against white supremacists. He's gone on this, lots of talking about, the attack on the Capitol, January 6th. There's a YouTube video that he was speaking about extremism, and I just was like clicking around, and the very first thing that I see as an image in his YouTube video, I'm just going to share this image. Oh, would I be able to get co-host, please?
Hamid, I think you're gonna have to do it.
It says Martios is host, so I don't know.
Oh, I'm co-host now. Okay, great. So this is the very first image I saw when I clicked and opened his YouTube talk. I just clicked in the middle of it and I saw that in a talk about extremism, he has a picture of somebody burning the Israeli and the American flag next to a picture of Hitler. And this is exactly what we mean by conflating the, like left wing and right wing, and conflating all these various different ideologies for the sake of pretending that this program is going to target white supremacists when, his own research on extremism is based on Black immigrants. So it's very clear. He did speak out against the Black identity extremism label, but that's for the exact same reason, because he wants CVE programs that are quote unquote holistic, that are supposed to target all forms of extremism. And ultimately, I think one great way that we can understand him, and I don't mean this as a compliment, I mean this as the worst insult, is a police reformer. In fact, he is his Safe Communities Institute. It includes these courses, these police reform courses. Also, this is him supposedly going on a talk on a British program to talk about police reform instead of defunding the police, in the middle of 2020. but it offers these various certificate programs, these various courses for law enforcement. And this is what, when in those meetings when Hamid and Matios were saying, he was touting his various students. And according to their own site, they talk about the fact that, they talk about homegrown violent extremism and terrorism in these courses. Also, the other thing to know is that, so in addition to being a police reformer and, this counterterrorism expert, he has really close connections to LA-based and national Zionist organizations, such as the Anti-Defamation League, which he actually hosted a panel with at a USC conference on extremism, and the Simon Wiesenthal Center, which runs the Museum of Tolerance here in Los Angeles. In fact, he was present at a press conference in 2005 when they were releasing their digital terrorism database, the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And I don't know what the database had in 2005, but if you look at it now, it lists BDS solidarity with Black Lives Matter as a form of extremism. It lists multiple student groups for Palestine as forms of extremism. It lists chants against the police, like Blue Lives Murder, as a form of extremism. And this is the type of organization that he's not only endorsing, he recommends their resources. I'll show you another thing where he's touting. One second, sorry. Oh, I lost it. There's a site, there's a place where he lists his resources on extremism, and he lists the Anti-Defamation League's database of anti-Semitism, which Palestinian Youth Movement has talked about how they constantly list even individual anti-Zionist chants as individual moments of anti-Semitism, supposed anti-Semitism, as well as the Simon Wiesenthal Center's Combat Hate program, which was actually created by a federal grant to combat extremism here in LA. So we know that he has these connections. We also know that this is nothing new in the sense that every police commission that I've seen in my entire time in LA has also been in favor of data-driven policing, has been in favor of police reform in the worst ways that we're talking about, has been in favor of ever-increasing military budgets for police, has been in favor of ever-deepening relationships with Zionist organizations. In fact, Steve Soboroff was intimately involved with the Friends of the IDF, so it's not new in that sense that he's another police commissioner with these ideologies. I think that one thing we can expect, though, is more of this kind of veil that he's doing this all to protect LA from white supremacy. We can expect more of this sense that these programs are necessary to combat the very real threat of fascist groups, vigilante groups, Proud Boys, like these very, very real white supremacist factions that are not the police, but obviously very closely tied to the police. We can expect more of this sort of this propaganda. But in terms of the police commission being a complete rubber stamp body that is continuing the business as usual, basically the task rabbits of the developers here in LA and the police union, we can expect more of the same. Another thing that we should watch out for is we already have seen under the last couple of years the fact that the city of LA completely flouted the desire of the communities which resoundingly rejected the Countering Violent Extremism program several years ago. In fact, the teachers union unanimously opposed both countering violent extremism and preventing violent extremism, forcing the mayor of LA to reject that grant. And recently, the police commission and the city council have pushed through basically a grant to reinvigorate one major component of that CVE program, which is the PATHE program. And we heard about that at the beginning of this webinar. So we're seeing a push to expand these various programs now, that they, basically completely against the will of the people. And we can expect more of that under Errol Southers. The other thing that is a little bit of foreshadowing is that he's actually slated to appear at a symposium, which we'll be discussing in just a few minutes here in LA, all devoted to fighting extremism, supposedly fighting extremism. And other guests we'll see include the former LA sheriff, include LA County Department of Mental Health official that has been involved in the PATH program. So we have various people who, they're conspiring, basically. That's what it's the analysis that this is intentional. They're conspiring to try to push these programs through under the veil that they're there to actually help communities that the police have never helped. Any questions on Errol Southers? Oh, sorry, one last thing before questions that I didn't mention is that he helms this institute. Sorry, one last thing that let me wait till they connect again. Okay, one last thing about Errol Southers that I forgot to mention is that he helms this institute at USC, and it's actually a Department of Homeland Security. They call them centers of excellence. They have these hubs, these research hubs all over the country. So it's actually a federal research institute that's based in USC, and it's devoted to basically researching and producing different projects. They produced a predictive policing program for USC's campus police. They produce various kinds of other, programs based on data-driven policing, based on fighting extremism, etc. So he's basically, in his past, in his present, he's both a cop and a federal agent, a police reformer, a Zionist, an imperialist, etc. He's all of those various things. In other words, perfect candidate for the police commission. So any questions about Errol Southers after my rant? Did I leave anything out? Celine, Nadia, Mateus, Maraki.
No, that was great.
I just have a quick question, but not on Errol Southers, so I'll wait till this conversation is.
Just also stay tuned, because after Hamid's question, we are going to all look at this upcoming extremism symposium here in LA, which features Errol Southers as a speaker, and we're going to, we're going to check it out all together. So stay tuned. Cool. Hamid, do you want to go?
Yeah, just the LA Times reported that the LAUSD is launching a reporting app. I'm sure, I don't know if you all are, I'm sure you're familiar with that. So this is extremely, concerning. And, this is exactly what the See Something, Say Something process was. And we saw the impact on the community. We saw that how this became a license for racial profiling. where about 70+% of these see something, say something reports were coming from majority white neighborhoods in Los Angeles, West Side and other places. So similarly now this is being launched, and people can report anonymously, just, and the chief, the commander of the LAUSD police would be doing a triage, and on and on and on. So, this was just a question because now, people like Student Deserve and other folks who have been organizing in the schools, and then the TVTP grants and those programs and the PATHE program. I'm just wondering, where are and how are we going to be, building on this, and what's our response to that and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. This needs to be a huge priority. It's so early in the sense that they probably don't have a lot of reports right now. And I don't think we want to let it get to this point, but it would be awesome later on, if it unfortunately did, to do an audit of that, to demand, those records. But up first, I mean, we don't, has it been fully confirmed by the student, by the school board?
Apparently, I mean, this is coming up. This is a new app, and I believe I'm not fully aware of that. I just saw this flash. Somebody actually texted it to me. Who is at LAUSD, and they've been very familiar with the coalition work. They're a member of the Black Lives Matter, and just wanting our opinion on that. So my suggestion to the Warren Youth group would be that if we can do a little bit of analysis to share information after looking at this thing, and based on the history of our work and stuff that we've been doing, I think it may not be a bad idea to offer, because it is clearly a suspicious activity reporting, and that whole PATHE program and SAR, that whole intersection, around behavioral surveillance and other, it's really concerning. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, thanks
I
for
was just laying it like this.
I appreciate that.
The other thing is that it is going not only to the police, but psychiatric social workers. It's kind of like this multidisciplinary team. It seems like this is like a tech version, like it's combining with PATHE in that way. It's like, I'm sure if it goes to the social workers, then they're going to have to like identify cases that'll be referred to PATHE. It'll be like combined with that program.
I'm just wondering, I don't know if Nadia, since it's an LAUSD, if they have informed teachers about this app, or have you all heard anything about this?
No, they have not. They have not informed us about this, but definitely I think, I think we do need to look into this for sure. So I know we have our working group meeting coming up too. So, and we'll share that with folks. That's open to everybody. It's a chance to just go deeper into the work, strategizing and everything. So I think that would be a perfect place to raise this. So yeah, definitely.
Okay, because the folks who reached out, they said that this is kind of moving fast. So, so they just wanted our advice and suggestion on this.
I think it would be, if you could like forward that, I think definitely we should, and if it's obviously if it's like very urgent, then I think we can organize a conversation like even before the working meeting if necessary.
Yeah, the working meeting is on Thursday.
It's going to be so right now, since we're doing Steam to the Future, the next one would be on the fall next week. What is the date? Oh, sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, Matthias, I'm looking at my calendar too.
Oh, I might be tripping. I think I have it for this Thursday, but maybe it's the first and third Thursday we've been doing
It's the
working
third
with.
Thursday. I thought next Thursday was the third. My bad.
Might
Yes,
be.
it is this Thursday.
I'll double check the calendar right now, but I think it's likely this Thursday.
Mhm. Should we maybe move on to looking at the symposium, or was there more we wanted to maybe talk about this? But yes, it is the third Thursday, which I'm looking now is that it would be this week. Yeah, I was thinking, you know, I had the the Tuesday in my head. That's why I thought next week. So yes, it is this week, the 16th. So yeah, so if folks are cool with it, then should we move on to the symposium part?
Do you all want to just see the app really quickly? You want me to show you what it looks like?
Sure, I feel that'd be cool.
So it looks like this when you download it. Can you all see this?
Yeah,
And then if you click report an incident, it's got these 8 things, and one of them is literally suspicious activity. Then there's, you know, threat of planned school attack. There's, you know, there's property damage, vandalism. When we've been working with these youth, and we looked at these reports done on school policing, and overwhelmingly the tickets and citations were for things like vandalism, or literally what was the term, Matios, when, or Maraki, when it's literally just speaking when somebody doesn't want you to speak. Anyway, and then there's school safety threat. There's, and when you click on one of them, it makes you like select your like location, and then you go through it, and basically like you put a photo and description. It's really disgusting. It's basically it's just a complete snitch app. Anyway, sorry you all.
it's disturbing the peace, I think was the other citation.
Yeah, disturbing the peace. Yeah, it was overwhelmingly, it was vandalism or disturbing the peace. That like 13-year-olds were getting hundreds of dollar fines for. Also, the other thing is that this is a successful attempt at what the Preventing Violent Extremism wanted to do in LAUSD schools. So preventing violent extremism, remember, preventing violence, first that term was, you know, these leaked guidelines from the FBI. But then there was an official program in LA based on a donation, based on a grant from the state of California that was actually federal Homeland Security money, to the Simon Wiesenthal Center Museum of Tolerance. And they created an app called Combat Hate. And they wanted to get kids to fill out and report hate incidents and reports. They also had another app that was specifically aimed at college students called Combat Hate U. And that one was specifically all over the app. You can still download this app and see. It just lists anti-Israel, like that's what you're supposed to report. But I don't think either of them really took off as far as I know. This one seems like finally the police and the, you know, they got the school board to make it a policy. So I just wanted to say this is something they've been trying to do for years.
In reading the article too, apparently this is supposed to be like a reform, a way to not involve police, which is really interesting to think about. So I'm curious to know, like, who do these reports go to then? And like, who's responding, I guess. Is there any information on that?
Yeah, the article
Like,
lists, I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
the specific, I was gonna do more kind of other response. Go ahead.
No, they list a few of the departments, Cam, including the commander for the LAUSD police, as Akhil was pointing out, some of the other groups as well. It's a triage thing, and it's very much built on that model of suspicious activity reporting program, which was, again, just the whole idea that deputization of community and to recruit community members to report on people. So yeah, this is exactly how, like you'd want no police. Okay, this is what we'll do. We'll just turn everybody else into cops. So that's really the whole agenda behind it. And then people don't even have to pay. And in those reports, exactly, we saw how those suspicious activity reporting audits showed that 31% of these secret files, and because these are not anonymous as well, so you don't even know who's calling you in. 31% of those in 1 year identified individuals as Black on these reports, and where they had the gender thing set up. This was there were over 50% were identified as Black women in LAPD's program. So it's an extremely dangerous thing. This can lead to a lot of things. Yeah, and just how youth will respond to it and how youth will be deputized through that and what orientation is going to take place. It's really an ugly downhill slope.
I was gonna add too, Kim, that's kind of what's making, obviously we know this whole community policing, that kind of BS being pushed right now, right, around as folks are more criticizing the police, at least on the mainstream a little more, as we see that pushed. That's kind of been one of the, I guess, quote, selling points for these programs, for these anti-violent extremism, anti-terrorism programs, has been, okay, we're trying to not, we want to go away from policing. It's all about the community, sort of doing it. But of course, yes, at the end of the day, A, they're still doing the work of the police, and B, these programs are by the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's still very much is policing. But yeah, that's been one of the sort of pushing selling points and trying to get like reformists on board, basically.
Yeah, I think to clarify my point was I meant that comment as something negative, not like, oh, this is a cool reform. But yeah, and thinking about this, the argument of the whole like, oh, this is for the safety of the kids is really wild, because it doesn't say it until the end, but this app is only for staff. Is that true, Akhil?
First of all, wow, you pronounced my name so well. Secondly, I'm pretty sure that they have one app, this LASAR, for everybody, but then they said that they have another one for just employees to report emergencies. That's what I saw in the first article that Matios linked. It says, yeah, this new app is for teachers, parents, staff, and community members. And then a second app, which functions strictly to report an emergency, is available to school employees. Maybe they're not publicizing the second one because it's like a private thing to download or something.
Yeah, I'm really glad this was raised. Head, and just show. Move on. So we just got this. None of us have really had a chance to look through this yet. So we thought tonight would be a good opportunity for us to do this. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen, and I'll also put the link of it in the chat. Oh, if I can get permission to share screen, please. That way folks can also look at them on their own. So all right, so this is basically, again, our folks over in Boston, the Muslim Justice League, doing just really, really great work over there and fighting also against CVE. They sort of flagged this for us, and basically this is, right, so looking at these symposiums happening, right, this one is happening, sorry, let me just open this. Okay, I think the same website. So basically, sorry, I think I put the same thing twice. So this is looking at a symposium that's supposed to happen. And so I thought maybe what we could do is just kind of look through, you know, and folks have the link there. So feel free to look through on your own, or if you're not able to, you could just look at the screen. And, you know, so just wanted to look through it and just see if people want to share just their thoughts, right? So obviously we see here, I just highlighted here, the symposium will be an opportunity for interdisciplinary professionals dedicated to preventing targeted violence, terrorism, and their impacts within the United States to connect and learn from one another. So obviously we know this is an interdisciplinary approach, right? As kind of, Kim, as you were pointing out as well, right? This sort of claim to get away from policing. So in that regard, bringing in other professionals. And so, and it says here, we'll be convening professionals to address topics such as early prevention and reporting in schools, establishing trust between community stakeholders, refining referral channel processes, compulsion, and voluntariness, among other topics. All educators, behavioral and mental health professionals, and prevention and intervention practitioners are encouraged to join. So that's sort of, I guess, what we would call that, like their mission statement for the symposium. And yeah, feel free, anybody, just to kind of cut in if there's anything you're sort of seeing. And these are the speakers. And I know, Akil, if you don't mind, I'll put you on the spot. I know you've done a good amount of research on this person right here, David Eisenman. So I don't know if there's anything you would like to share.
Yeah, so David Eisenman, you'll hear me?
Sorry about that. Go for it. My earphone died. Go ahead, Akil.
Yeah. So David Eisenman, he's a UCLA professor, and he was one of two academics, the other one based in Illinois, who were contracted by the Department of Homeland Security to evaluate LA's CVE program and give the city of LA and the Department of Homeland Security their recommendations. And one of the things that they evaluated it, and one of the things they said is that, you know, the program needs to be more sort of secret. It needs to be folded into existing bureaucracy, not be so flashy, not have its like own name, its own thing based on extremism. It should be called something to do with targeted violence, and basically maybe use the school threat assessment and response team, which is a collaboration between the Department of Mental Health and the school district and police. And they also said that in the battle for like the hearts and minds of LA around these extremism programs, evidently there are a lot of people, they specifically said, who are like to the right of Stop LAPD Spying. I'm paraphrasing them. But they named Stop LAPD Spying, and they were like, we have to reach them. And the other thing is that he's continued his career as an extremism researcher, researching, how people report on each other and what can be done to make people report on each other more. So he got a grant then from the Department of Justice, the National Institute of Justice, to do that research. And as we can see by the symposium, he's continued to be involved in this field. I know that he also has participated a lot in trying to get the public health industry, because he's also a public health academic, to be involved in the quote unquote fight against extremism. And one of the things he's recommended is even creating a public health diagnosable definition of extremism, which is it's a very eugenicist idea, the idea that people can be diagnosed by medicine with extremism and therefore be medically deserving of some kind of removal or treatment or something like that. So that's a little bit about him.
Thank you, Akil. Appreciate you sharing that. Does anyone, how about any of these other folks? Do people recognize them or have heard of them? I think that seems to be the list of speakers.
Any chance we can post the link in chat? I think
I thought I
wanted to.
did.
Mamta
Oh,
wanted
sorry.
it too, but she waited in
Oh,
too
did
late,
it?
so that's all right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I posted it. No,
Oh,
I'm gonna post it again.
sorry, I didn't see it.
No,
Yeah,
no worries.
No, I think that the person from UC Davis, yeah, I believe, I want to say that, yeah, she's been talking about national security now. But anyways, I'll take a look at some more and see. When is the symposium?
Looks like it's April 18th.
Oh, there it is. Oh, it's in
Yeah,
downtown.
and I think we could definitely, maybe on Thursday talk about sort of, how we want to move with this. Yeah. I think maybe Thursday would be a good space for us to talk about like some, just some strategy with this.
I'm thinking about the June symposium.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can also click on, there's another tab that shows, these are kind of like the featured speakers, but if you look at the schedule, it lists other people who are involved in each one, and some of them are like Amada Tangridis is there, who's really involved. She's the head of the CSP bureau, so you can see there's other people listed here.
Thank you. Yeah, and it looks like, right, so it's like an 8 to 6 type of thing. Establishing trust, early prevention reporting in schools. So it looks like that's with Eisenman. It's going to be really interesting. I mean, I'm sure LAPD's, oh, there we go. I was going to say there's no way it's going to be in LA and LAPD won't be there. So it looks like there's this one, addressing systematic gaps and helping those in crisis. Very typical, like CVE type language. Kind of seeing people as in this crisis, in this sort of pathway to becoming extremists. Wonder who the keynote's going to be right there. And there's this other, refining the referral channel process. So there we see somebody right from the Department of Mental Health too. That's always been a very key part of CVE and sort of its various manifestations is just involving mental health and mental health professionals. Obviously that connection we see of policing mental health. Voluntariness, incentives, and compulsion. So yeah, there's that. Let's see, there's what PPN resources means. Okay. Prevention Practitioners Network. Have we, I feel like, have we really talked about this Prevention Practitioners Network? I'm trying to think. Is that familiar to anybody? Oh, okay, they were a recipient of TVTP, yeah. So TVTP, again, for folks, maybe that's the Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention. So we're just giving out grants to different, organizations, nonprofits, agencies who are engaging in CVE work. Let's see. Oh, here we go, about the Institute. So this is kind of impact report team. So the homepage seems to have a lot more just about who they are. Making an impact. So we see they're combating human trafficking, preventing targeted violence, national security and counterterrorism. Well, there's a lot here to look through. And I just want to pause real quick because is anybody maybe like perusing through it on their own and have anything they've come across and noticed? Empowering communities to address hate-based violence. So right, that rhetoric we're seeing about these programs targeting white supremacists, when obviously we know a white supremacist system will never target white supremacists, but that's definitely a selling point that we see happening. Sedona Forum. Also, it looks like, so this was, okay, so this looks like it was the 2022. Oops, what is this? A video. This looks like, blah, blah. Excuse me. This looks like it was from the 22 symposium. Sorry, can folks hear me okay? So,
Yep, you're coming through clearly, Nadia.
oh, sorry, let me just. Okay. I don't know if people want to watch that, but and I'm sorry, I realized my headphone had disconnected, so my bad if anyone started talking and I interrupted. Yeah, so anyone want to share any thoughts around this or anything they've maybe seen? Oh, okay, so these are the folks who were in 2022. I don't know if anyone's, okay, obviously, yeah, the senators. Feel free to just kind of chime in or cut in if anyone knows these people. Wow, that's a lot of interesting. They don't, it's interesting. Is this, I wonder, does this look like the same symposium? Because this has a lot of more people and like politicians. I don't know if this is the same symposium.
Maybe this isn't the preventing network, and this is just the McCain Institute.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so I think yeah, I don't know how much we want to talk sort of strategy right now. But yeah, I definitely think our presence should be there.
I agree, and maybe that's something we should talk about at the working group meeting, or even schedule an in-person meeting to kind of do that.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, anybody else just want to share some general thoughts? And thanks for just kind of moving through this with us again. We just got this, and so this is kind of, I was in a faculty meeting till like almost 5, so it was even my first look at this. So it's definitely it's what I would suspect. Oh, Mamta, I see your hand is raised. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much about the symposium, but all of this, and I'm sorry if we already talked about this earlier in the meeting, but all of this is just very relevant right now, and kind of scary, as the Stop Cop City folks in Atlanta have been charged with domestic terrorism charges. And so, we, of course, like, the coalition has always been very clear from early on that these laws against domestic terrorism and extremism are never going to be targeting, white supremacists, but indeed are meant to suppress dissent and come after Black and brown folks, and that's exactly what's happening in Atlanta. And I don't know if we've, like, as a coalition, kind of talked about what's happening there, and just wanted, all of this is making me really kind of think about why it's so important for us to push back against this kind of rhetoric and these developments, and why they're coming up as more and more folks are taking to the streets to fight police terror.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you. Thank you for raising that. Yeah, I think we do need to talk about that. And I think it'll be interesting to see how, yeah, how they, I wonder if that, I imagine that would be mentioned, if not like discussed at the symposium, right? Pretty in detail. So it'll be interesting to see how we, yeah. Does anyone else have any other just thoughts or general kind of, yeah, whether it's questions or anything they noticed? Okay. Okay, cool. No, again, thanks for just kind of looking through that with us. And yeah, and again, just want to invite folks to our which it is this Thursday, our working meeting. So we'll be discussing this as well. And yeah, I just want to maybe pass it on to see if anyone has any announcements, anyone from the coalition or anyone else, any community announcements they'd like to share before we close tonight.
Yeah, I do want to share something. I'm from Long Beach and I do work on anti-surveillance, showing up to some of y'all spaces and stuff. So I just wanted to share that in April, sometime in April, we're gonna be hosting a anti-surveillance teach-in, and it's gonna be both in Spanish and English. And in there, we're going to be exploring just like surveillance in history and how it has now manifested now. And then because it is going to be in both languages, it is going to be very one-on-one. We do want to have a piece of engagement from our monolingual Spanish speakers, specifically immigrant communities, to be involved in the fight. Long Beach right now wants to ban, well, all surveillance technology, but right now we're focusing specifically on facial recognition and automated license plate readers, since those are the most routine tech used by police, and we want to really just chip away and disrupt that. But the ultimate goal is to have a surveillance ban. So I wanted to extend that invitation. I'll share more information once we do have flyers. But it's really exciting. We're hoping to get a petition started to bring it to some of our visits with council members, which we know takes a lot of push, and hopefully, we can get an ordinance to ban it. So I'll share more of that with y'all, but just wanted to give you all a heads up that will be coming up in April.
Cool, thank you. And yeah, I would love to stay in touch with you too. So if you are available this Thursday, we'll put our email in the chat, and if you'd like to share that, that'd be great to stay in touch and build together and support that. Thank you.
And just real quickly, another announcement, next Tuesday is our general meeting. It's the third Tuesday of the month, which we've been having in person now. So this Tuesday, next Tuesday, we were going to invite folks in the community to have a conversation about the charges around domestic terrorism and what it means for the rest of the country, what's going on in Atlanta, with the cop city and all. So yeah, just want to share that. Please be on the lookout for, it's going to be 6 p.m. at LA Can, at where our home is. So that's next Tuesday, the 21st. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else have an announcement or anything they'd like to share? Okay, cool. Well, just appreciate folks joining us. And again, this Thursday, 5 p.m., we'll have our working meeting. So feel free to email us. I put the email there to get that info. And hopefully everyone has a great evening. Appreciate folks' participation and joining.
Thank you, Nadia.
All right, yeah, thank you too much. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.